Good afternoon, champions. My name is Dylan, and I am coming to you live from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Uh, I gotta get this show moving a little bit faster than usual. So first things first, I'd like to thank everybody at Dungeons and Dragons for everything. We wouldn't be here on this channel with this game without them. So thank you all, and I'd also like to acknowledge the amazing folks who helped make this all possible. So Clive and Erica here at Codename helping with moderation across Mixer and Twitch, and the amazing Lauren Obo Crazy Urban in chat. So thank you. Welcome to our show. My guest today has another appointment coming up really soon, so let's just go right into it. I would like to welcome Nathan Sharp to the stream. And
hello.
Oh yeah, good. I was worried for a second there that I didn't unmute you, but I can hear you, so this is good.
Right on.
Welcome. The busiest member of the Waffle Crew has carved out a little bit of time to out of his schedule to join us and talk about video games, and Paultin. So I guess kind of just to get the ball rolling, because it takes people a second to start their questions up, is I asked Anna, Holly, and Jared this. When you came up with Paultin and you started playing him on stream, what aspects of your personality kind of just came out first? Like, what parts of Nate are manifesting as Paultin Seppa?
Man, it's interesting to answer that because, like, overall, like, Paultin, at least pre like party development, was kind of more of a negative person. He was a little more like pessimistic and snarky and kind of like would see the potential dark side of things, which I don't know. Sometimes I can get in that headspace, so it might be that. It might be the worrying and the like kind of paranoid type stuff.
Yeah.
But he was also a big thing with him is I think his sense of humor and his comedy, his very like dry humor and his offhanded comments are probably like one of the biggest things that I definitely relate to.
Fair enough. Now, a lot of people describe him as D&D Deadpool. And it's hard not to notice how frequently he likes to break the fourth wall. Is that something that you, like, in building the character, you were like aiming to do that, or did it just kind of happen?
It was totally intentional. When we started the show and we were making our characters, Deadpool was in theaters, and it was I had seen it a couple times, and I was just like obsessing about it. So I'm just like, this would be a fun character like to play, and I had an opportunity to make a new character and think of a personality, think of traits and stuff. So like the fourth wall breaking is always a ton of fun, and I always at least try to keep it somewhat balanced. I make sure it's not like a game breaking wall break, but maybe like a weird offhanded reference that no one in that universe would actually understand.
Yeah.
Things like that, without it being like, oh, I know this thing above game, so I'm going to apply it to this, and just completely ruin the meta of the situation.
Yeah.
So it's a fun and kind of tricky line to walk on, but still keeping it in. But yeah, that was totally intentional. It's so much fun to do.
Do you have a highlight joke for you that maybe, for you personally, that maybe didn't land, but you're like, oh, that was so brilliant, how come nobody reacted?
Off the top of my head, not really. I feel like for the most part, I feel like a lot of the stuff lands maybe even more so than it's like intended to, just because it's almost jarring for that, like, for the viewer to almost for a second be like sucked out of that universe and be reminded like, oh, this is a reference to real life and things like that. And then it's just like, oh, and it like kind of, it's really attention grabbing. So, but ones that didn't land, I'm sure there are a bunch, because he's, it's kind of the whole like, kind of the thing with that type of like charisma and personality is kind of throwing out spaghetti for jokes to see like what actually sticks. So it's just comments left and right, and for all I know, a lot of stuff didn't land. It just went like right over my head because I'm already like trying to move on and think of like, what's he gonna say next.
Okay. Like, on the note of thinking about what's next with Paultin, do you have like a huge backstory written and planned out for him, or is it something that you improvise more as you play the game?
It wasn't actually until this most recent season that I had started planning a lot more backstory because with everything with, and if there are people watching that aren't caught up on DCA, there might be minor spoilers, but the links with like Barovia and all of that was all Chris Perkins. That was me handing him
Oh.
basically, as far as like backstory, like he was kind of a, a blank canvas. It was just like I have who he is today. I don't really have anything that shaped him. So I was like, feel free, because I never really written a backstory for a character before.
Mhm.
But up more recently, things with, he's been talking about his past a little more, and it's been a lot of fun trying to write backstory that kind of pieces in and fits, all the while like is still new things that I had thought of that I'm like further developing, even though at the time of like creating him, like this totally wasn't a thought. So most recently, there's been a lot of planning. Yeah.
And now, when you do any of that planning, is it something that you would collaborate with Anna or Jared or Holly on, or just kind of something that you come up with yourself and you bounce off Chris? How does that creative
It's
collaboration work?
it's a bit of both. I think I usually bounce it off of Chris if it's something that could potentially come up in our current storyline, because I don't want to, as much as I would like love to completely, flesh out this character. I also, as a personally, as I DM for my home game, I know if there are big changes, like I at least like to know about them, so I can like maybe plan some things around it and
Mhm.
stuff like that. If it's minor things like, oh, my feelings for this has changed or my outlook on this has changed, sometimes I'll bounce it off the rest of the cast, or sometimes I'll just be like, this is a thing now. A lot of it's improvised too. A lot of it's like in the moment change of feelings as just like, oh, I guess that's it now. He kind of sometimes, like as any like dedicated player will tell you, like the characters start to develop their own sense and they just kind of start playing themselves, and it almost feels like you're just watching them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess in some ways they take on a life of their own, and then
Mm-hmm.
you also have how audiences react to your characters as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. With Paultin, that's so different from I had only played a couple of D&D characters before joining Dice Camera Action, and an audience is such a it doesn't completely change how you play, but it is a factor. But
Mhm.
then when you also throw in the fact that you have a character that is aware of the audience and sometimes like interacts with them, with that trait, like the audience viewing plays a much larger role than it normally would for just like a home character.
And how does that different from like the weekly stream where you have everybody call in versus like your stage show at TwitchCon?
We've talked about this a lot actually, and we've there. I mean, I can't completely speak for the rest of the crew, but the consensus I get is that both have their advantages. One advantage for the call-in is that unlike an in-person game, you have everyone's faces in front of you at all times, so you see everyone's reactions to
Mm-hmm.
everything. Uh, versus when you're at a table, whoever it is you're looking at, that's whose reaction you see, so you end up like missing a lot more stuff, which I think is a little bit more real and a little bit more believable, because when there's a lot of stuff happening, when there's multiple conversations going on amongst like 4 to 8 people,
Yeah.
you're gonna miss some stuff and you're gonna miss some reactions. So personally, I'm a big fan of in person at a table. um, like latency with internet makes for a little harder to
Hmm.
do better comedic timing, especially a lot of the shticks that Paultin and Diet have in person. Because there's also like the aspect of the physical humor.
Hmm.
Like a big difference I love is uh, when we're doing our online game, that you have to describe, like Paultin puts a hand on Dia's shoulder or stuff like that, whereas in person you just do it. Like you
Hmm.
don't have to describe what you're doing, and
Hmm.
it's just completely dialogue driven, which I think is so much fun.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of the things I really admire because I watch a couple shows. I mean, I find it hard to stay up to date on too many because each one of them
Mhm.
tends to be like a 3 hour, 4 hour commitment
Mhm.
a week. But because Dice Camera Action doesn't use minis or sets or anything like that, and
Mhm.
everything is described by all of the players and Chris,
Mhm.
the headcanon for it is really vivid in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely love that aspect. I actually, for the most part, every game I've played in, we don't really use minis or mats or anything like that. They're really cool, and I definitely think they have their place. I think for our show especially, which is very much narrative focused, I think that's a lot better because it's like you said, everyone has their own headcanon, everyone can illustrate the scene as they see fit in their mind, and it's going to be like the best version of it to them rather than it being like completely laid out for you. So I think that's a really cool aspect of it.
Yeah. We have questions piling up, so I should probably start getting to them. I have the obligated one, which is the what is your gaming setup at home? Are you PC gamer, console, Xbox, Switch, that kind of thing?
I have my PC here set up that actually just got set up recently, mostly for D&D. But for the most part, I'm a console gamer. Been playing a lot of Smash Bros. Trying to get back into PS4 Overwatch. I grew up a console player, so to me, it feels a lot more comfortable and native to be gaming from a couch rather than a chair directly in front of screens.
Yeah.
Across the living room. So that's just what was native to me, and that's kind of what I stuck with.
No, fair enough. Our lunch hours we're either playing D&D in our boardroom if there's not a meeting, or half the office is playing Smash. So seems to be the way that it goes. So let's see, what do we have here? We have RF Switch Art. Nate, I just want to say that for a newer D&D player, you really handle yourself well, especially with DCA.
Oh, thank you. I think a big thing with that is that I think the role play really appeals to me, coming from like more of a voice acting background, and I got really like character and role play and dialogue focus. So thank you. That's kind of just a big driving aspect of how I play.
Yeah, and to build on that a little bit, how did you get into voice acting? Because I was looking at your IMDb and I was like, there's a lot of credits here. You played a lot of additional voices, a lot of characters, just tons of shows.
Yeah, I kind of fell into it, especially after I moved to LA, where there's a lot of that. But it kind of started going around the anime convention scene because I would be a guest at a lot of these conventions, but it was for my channel and my music, and I wasn't actually a voice actor, which is usually 90% of the guests there. And doing those circuits, I got to meet a lot of directors and other actors and people who are in that realm of the industry. And then that kind of one thing led to another, and I kind of got my foot in the door doing like extra things, extra little like bit parts while I was in town. And eventually that leads up to like, hey, there's a character to audition for, or there's a role we have in mind for you, things like that. So it just kind of stumbled into it. But it's something I always wanted to do as a kid because, grew up watching cartoons. I'm just like, oh man, doing the voices would be a blast. So that's kind of how that went down.
Do you have a favorite voice?
Ooh, there's a couple dating simulators I voiced in that is kind of in that realm what I'm most known for. These two games, Dream Daddy and Monster Prom, were both big ones that were a ton of fun to do, and people love the games a lot. So it's really cool to go to conventions and see how much love people have for these specific characters. It's always cool.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny because I remember reading a thing about how Dream Daddy was marketed, which was really clever as well, in that forming direct connections with people about the specific characters in it. It was really clever.
Yeah.
What else do we have for questions? The Rambling Bard. Hey, gentlemen. Loving Paultin and Idle Champions almost as much as the real thing. Oh, that's not a question. That's just...
But appreciate it.
But a good statement.
Yeah.
Here we go. Question. Strahd von Cherevich versus Chair Richten was the funniest moment in D&D basically ever. How much fun was that for you guys?
That was such a blast. We had like very, very lightly planned it preemptively, just from talking between those two sessions. And it's one of those things where like these ideas come up and then you can't even remember whose idea it was, because once you spend that much time with the same group of people, it kind of becomes like a hive mind thing. But one of us was just like, what if we had a chair fight? It was like, yes, do that. So that's how that went down. And yeah, that's one of the most like memorable, like just fun scenes from the show for sure.
Yeah, I remember when we were putting the design for Paultin in the game together, and we were doing our research. Ended up rewatching that episode, and just I don't think I've ever seen Chris Perkins laugh so hard at anything.
Oh,
Like he looked like he was genuinely losing it. Yeah.
and that's always such a great thing when we can make Chris laugh and have a good time and just like lose his mind over the weird antics we do. That's always just like such a good feeling because we're like, yeah, we made him happy.
Pan P Love would like to know if there's any class you would want to play sometime soon.
Ooh, I've gotten so used to playing a bard that I just kind of don't know anything else. But before I was playing Paultin, I always went with the rogue class because if I wasn't going to be like an obnoxious, like dramatic person, then I always wanted to be like the cool edgelord and things like that. And actually, in the initially designing them, I had wanted Paultin to be a rogue, but we already had a rogue, so I was just like, all right, what's the next best thing? And I'm like, all right, bard works, and I think it ended up playing out a lot better. But it is fun to go back and think like, how would things have played out differently if Paultin was the rogue? So.
Yeah, well, I mean, bards are also rogues and wizards and everything else, right? So you could be as rogue as you want to be in a way.
That's fair.
Yeah. Let's see, what do we got? Villas Farthuk. Speaking of Paultin breaking the fourth, one of my players in a non-Faerun setting was recently sent to the Yawning Portal, so I had him run into Paultin there so that Paultin could reveal plot points to him in a quasi-fourth wall breaking way, asking him what world he was from, and if he wasn't from Faerun, noting, "You're not from Barovia, are you?"
That's cool. It's always fun to see fans talk about them bringing our characters into their home games and how they play them out and things they would do. And I feel like for the most part, they usually get it right. The love for the Waffle Crew is really cool. And as they describe these scenes, a lot of them I read involving Paultin are fourth wall breaks and just like really ridiculous stuff that he would totally do. And it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, and you guys are in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist book in the Yawning Portal giant piece of art.
The big art. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
When we first saw that, it was an emotional moment. We were just like, oh my god, we're there.
Yeah, that's even more official, I think, than being in a D&D video game. So like, it's you guys exist. You're part of Dungeons and Dragons canon forever.
Oh, that's amazing. That still like takes a long time for it to sink in, especially for me, who I'm still relatively new to D&D. It's just a huge honor. So,
it was 5th edition your gateway into D&D, or did you play in earlier versions?
The first thing I ever played was actually Pathfinder probably like 6-7 years back, but that was a game that didn't last more than like 2 sessions. And then my first session that lasted a little bit longer than that was 5th edition. So I think Pathfinder was like kind of the gateway into like the role play aspect, which made it cool. And then 5th edition, with how accessible it is and how quick it is to pick up and how easy it is to make a character, I think that really, really got me into it. Because the first time I made a character, it was like 4-hour process or something like that.
Yep.
And I'm doing homework right now. Like this is, like, what is this the whole game? But then we got into the playing with it and actually applying the characters and stuff. I'm just like, oh, okay, this is cool.
And then, you know, now you're 100 and something episodes into a character, right? Like, it's crazy.
Wild.
A question from Table Titans. Paultin, does the Waffle Crew have any plans to get Binwin Bronzebottom resurrected back into the physical plane? Asking for a friend.
If they do, then Paultin's out of the loop on that.
Okay, Sir Monstein. Nathan has an amazing chair. Not saying it because I'm in the same model and color right now.
It's a good chair. It's got that lumbar. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do any kind of plug.
Well, lumbar support and drink holders. Gift Nova. Speaking of voice acting, what advice would you give someone who wants to get into it who doesn't have any connections?
Just like practice how you can. Take classes, workshops, depending on where you live, are usually the best way to go about that. It's a good way to learn from people who have been doing it for a very long time, who have a lot of great tips, and it's a good way to also meet them. So classes and workshops are definitely the way to go.
Connor 650123. Will the rug become like the broom for Diath?
I don't know. I have no idea what's happening with that rug. All I know is that's where Paultin currently is losing his life to the hands of this rug. And it's still just hilarious that we've gone through all this stuff, and this is where Paulton's just kind of accepting, like, this is how I go. This is what ends me. This is the death of me, and that's fine.
Let's see. Consulting Polymath. Well, that's an interesting name. I've been a fan of Nate's music for years and years, and it was because of him I started watching DCA and got into D&D. I want to thank him for being such an inspiration and for helping me find my passion.
That's awesome. That's, man, every single time we get that comment when it's just like, you got me into D&D. That's like so awesome. That's so cool to hear, and that really means a lot.
Let's see. Ultra Tom 100. I love Nate more so as Pluck on Dark and Dicey, but I relate to Paultin as a character as well. What is your favorite part of DMing yourself and or playing both Paultin and Pluck?
Ooh, DMing. Well, as a DM, the first game I'm DMing, I feel spoiled because my players are incredible. They're so much fun to DM, and sometimes it feels like I'm barely driving the story. Like a lot of plot points that I might have planned end up playing out themselves, or they think of something completely better. And I just kind of put the pieces there and then just watch what they do with it. And it's always, I don't know, I feel like I'm watching a great D&D show when I'm DMing my home game. And then they turn to me to be like, all right, so what's happening? It's just like, oh yeah, I'm part of this. So, but yeah, I think one of the coolest things with DMing is just creating this story, building up this world and then putting these players in it and then seeing just what they do.
Now, do you like, I had a really clumsy question around that, basically just asking, when your players are building and assembling the world for you in that context, do you see it more as like you're kind of steering the ship, or do you just kind of like totally fly by the seat of your pants, wing it, improvise your way through?
When I'm planning out a session, which actually reminds me, I need to plan tomorrow's session. When I'm planning out a session, I have what I would like to happen, but the last thing I want to do is DM a campaign that's on rails, because I feel like because I know a few people who have done like D&D stuff, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's kind of cool, it's neat, but when they describe it, it really feels like their DM is more focused on telling their own story rather than having their players become part of the story. So sometimes I feel like I'll steer the ship if there's something really, really crucial that they need to do, but it's less steering the ship and more just like pointing at the wheel, be like, hey, maybe check that out. That'll probably help. So yeah, I try to find the balance between freedom, but also like keeping a story moving along. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to balance. It can be especially hard with some players. One player would like to know, or actually one watcher, how vastly different do you think the campaign would be if the Waffle Crew had done the sensible thing and destroyed Simon when they met him?
Oh, man. Yeah, because thinking back, I've never actually thought about that, but Simon actually is a kind of a big part of it. Not just like, oh, here's this fun, wacky characters there, but like a lot of stuff that happens with Simon causes the characters, especially Evelyn and Paultin, to like really think about some scenarios and do some introspection that probably wouldn't have been prompted if Simon weren't a part of it. So I don't know. Simon's also been kind of a bonding thing, so it could have been very different for all I know, but that'd be an interesting scenario to see play out.
Yeah, I mean, Simon is sitting on your shoulders in the game right above you right now, slightly highlighted, but just shooting poison darts. It's yeah, it like even just thinking about the bad jokes that Chris was making when Simon could talk. There's a lot. There's a big role.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mindless Systems would like to know if you have a favorite race slash class.
Ooh, I didn't get a ton of experience with Pluck, but Kenku are very interesting. There's a lot of things with them that I kind of had to flub in order to make him a playable character, because there's the whole thing they don't have their own voice.
Mhm.
They communicate telepathically. So the thing I had to make with his voice is his voice was just the voice of someone he spent years and years and years with, to where he was basically able to build up and mimic enough sounds to where he can just speak common. But the whole mimicry thing is a lot of fun, because it's fun to use for deception.
Mhm.
When you hear some baddie like call out, and you mimic that to get whoever can't see you to think that that's you.
Mhm.
They're very tricky, and they're just really interesting. I also love birds, especially like crows and ravens. Obviously, I have a lot of attachment to them. So yeah, Kenku is definitely one of the most fun non-human races I've played.
Haru would like to know, where do you see Paulton's life in 5 years?
Um, that's a great question that I don't even know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the Waffle Crew finds, peace, and they all just kind of settle in and have a normal life. Maybe still out playing, taverns and pubs. Maybe dead. I have no idea. It could be.
Could be Death by Rug next week. So
Yeah, it could be next week. In 5 years, he could have been dead for 5 years. Who knows?
uh, uh, would you ever consider doing D&D with the PokeTuber squad? I don't know what that
Oh
is.
man, that would actually be really fun. Yeah, there's like a, what do you call it? There's like a sub community in YouTube gaming of people who are very much Pokemon based, that I became really good friends with back when I was doing a lot more Pokemon content, and they're all just really awesome people, and they're all fun to like. Anytime we do anything else, like we'll occasionally have get-togethers. We'll all just fly to one place and we'll all hang out for a weekend. Anytime we like play board games, or like do any kind of tabletop stuff, we never actually done D&D, but it's always just like really really intense energy and chemistry. I think that'd be a lot of fun. It's actually a really good idea.
Well, that was Fanpy Love or Panpy Love. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce their name.
Mm,
Argreen Paradox would like to know if Paulton is going to start stabbing potential Evelyn suitors.
probably. I don't know, maybe. There's there was a recent character development that was, again, something that I didn't even like sit down and think about and think like, this is how it's going to happen. It was more just like I realized that how he was acting was just kind of like, oh, I guess this is the development. He basically like came through with something on his own, and I didn't even consciously like write it out. But there
Mhm.
was a recent development with him. I'm not going too much into yet, but that is somewhat pertaining to that.
I won't pry because I don't want to try to spoil anything or ruin any awesome surprises.
Mhm.
Uh, Haru has a question again. It's for a newer viewer. Where would you recommend they start with DCA?
Ooh, I mean, I'm a bit I'm a bit biased because Barovia is like my home to me. It's actually I'm DMing Curse of Strahd for my home game with like my own twist on the story and the writing. Um, but I mean, Curse of Strahd is just such a really cool and intriguing and horrifying campaign that
Hmm.
I think that's a great place to start, because a lot of development happened there too. So
Yeah.
if I know putting in the time is tough, but I mean, a thing I've heard a lot of people do with the podcasts or the VODs is just watching it at like 2x speed to make it an hour long thing rather than a 2 hour, because you still like absorb everything that happens, and it saves you time on listening on it if that's something you're into. But yeah, I know a lot of people are just like, oh, there's so much to catch up on, but like we started in a great place, so I think starting at the beginning. is really good.
That's the campaign that we play at lunchtime when we can here in the office is a Curse of Strahd campaign that we
It's
are
so
quite
fun.
far into. And
Yeah.
yeah, good setting. We all
Oh
might
yeah.
die, but it's a good setting.
That's the gist of it. That's kind of the feel. Like every single session that they all have, they're just like, all right, we're gonna die. We're probably gonna die.
Yeah.
It's actually wild because like DMing it, obviously, like I'm, studying the book as much as I can and like learning everything I want to know about it. And it's a lot of times we, with Dice Camera Action, most of these are stories that Chris wrote, but then when the Waffle Crew gets in there, he puts his own spin on it, and it's a completely new story on its own that just kind of takes place in the setting. But reading through Curse of Strahd, like all the stuff that like is happening, I'm just like, I remember when that happened, and I remember when this happened, and you learn that it genuinely is just that messed up. Like that place is that terrifying.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, he like put on extra horror for us to make a cool show. It's like, nope, that's just Barovia.
Yeah, that's Barovia in a nutshell. Is all the gothic horror you can handle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Anathal Belazar, one of our regulars. Hi, Nate. First off, love how Mr. Pepper developed in those years. Did you ever regret having thrown that mystical flying instrument to that dragon turtle? I cringed so hard back then.
Yeah, every day. Like I as a player, I'm just like that was a good moment for personality and character development. I think Paultin still thinks about that mandolin every day. I think he misses flying.
Yeah.
Like that thing was great, and he was just like, I'm gonna make this noble sacrifice and just not talk about it, and it'll be fine. And then it was all for naught, and it's like, cool.
Well, the evil version of Paultin jumped in too.
Yeah.
Spoilers for episode, I don't know, 100 or so.
100 something.
Yeah. Garwar, was Paultin tempted at all to keep the Ring of Winter this time around?
Oh, absolutely. Like the evil like takeover aside, Paultin likes doing cool stuff. He's a performer, and being able to conjure an ice dragon is a spectacle in itself. So I think he was most tempted by what he can do with the ring, but obviously thinking back on the consequences of it, we're very much just like, nope, not worth it. Like don't hang on to it this time. As tempting as it is, and as interesting a Ice Paultin 2.0 arc could have been, it was just like, no, we're past this.
That's actually a really good segue into another question, because one of the other people in chat, Nico, it's like, how would you say Paultin has grown, or would you say Paultin has grown or reverted back to old faults? And sounds like he's growing.
He's definitely grown. The temptations of chaotic neutral are much more subsided. Example, like, oh, you're in this this Yuanti temple or whatever it was we saw, and it's like, we're trying to keep a low profile, we're trying to not cause too much of a ruckus and figure out what's going on, but also there's a gong up there, so obviously I need to try and ring it as loud as I can, because it'll be funny.
Yeah.
Like because chaotic neutral is a really interesting alignment to play, and a lot of people ask me about it. And I think one of the most like blanket rules I use is just like, is this a good idea comes second to, would this be entertaining? Basically. It's just like, this is a horrible idea, but it would be really funny. And I think that's something that it's definitely still there. But I think it's a lot more controlled at this point, and he has less tendencies to put the entire party at risk just for a chuckle. I think. Maybe not.
Getting there, maybe. Somebody named CW3 Claire, hasn't it been too long since Chris Perkins destroyed the party's hopes and dreams?
Yeah, one whole session is a pretty long time for him to do that with just a beach episode. But I don't know, like Chris throws in a lot of stuff that's very very challenging mentally and emotionally for the characters. I feel like in addition to that, though, like us to each other, we are, as much as we're a party and the Waffle Crew is a family, we're also like each other's hurdles sometimes. Like I feel like sometimes we get in the way of each other more so than anything else can. But yeah, I guess it's been a while, but I mean, we have the auction coming up, so I guess we'll see how that goes.
How was it actually? Just to clumsily segue, watching was it the PAX Unplugged show, the one where you guys were all DMing each other from letters from Chris?
Yes.
It looked like he knows you guys so well that he had contingencies properly written out for how you would play.
Oh yeah.
Is that totally the case? Because that's what it looked like.
Yeah, that was absolutely the case. Like he knows us, he knows how we play, and he knows, things like Simon's gonna ask to join the circus. What will Paultin do? And he knew that he'd be like, yeah, sure, why not? Because like a lot of the others, because with each one we read, the other outcomes for it, and for the most part, we all chose the outcome which we believe Chris knew we would play, because the other outcomes were a lot less pretty and a lot of bad things happened. So there were basically, we chose the outcomes that had the least death. So he knows us pretty well.
Connor would like to know if you have any word on Dark and Dicey returning.
No word currently, no.
And then Awesome Caddy K would like to know how long it took you to do all the voiced lines in Crystalline.
Oh, Crystalline. Yeah. That was spread out. That project is something where up until it was done, they would send a script every like few months that would take me a few hours to do. So it was little spurts of a lot of work, but then it would be months without really doing anything.
Is that a regular thing for your voice roles? Like you record it in your home studio as scripts come in?
For remote stuff, yeah, there are some projects where they're okay with that if they trust the actor to properly portray this character and there isn't like anything to match up with timing wise. Then usually it's like, all right, here's the scripts. Let us know if you have questions. Send in your lines. If there's anything we want different, once you're done, we'll let you know. For things like dubbing, where you need to match lip flaps and time codes and things like that, that's something where you like absolutely have to go in, because there's a lot more contingent on like perfect timing and things like that.
Huh. Good to know. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know a lot about how dubbing gets put together. I mean, the assumption is that it's just you go into a studio and you read the lines and you try to sync it up as best you can. Is that a good assumption of how it works?
Yeah, that's more or less it. It's a combination of the actor being able to match the rhythm. Basically, they'll play you the line in the native language so you can kind of get the timing. They'll give you the translation and then you kind of fit it in there. And then from there, it's kind of a team effort of the actor trying to match it up, the engineer being able to maybe edit it to squish in a bit, or the director rewriting the line to maybe add a couple syllables because it was too short, take off a couple because it was too long. And that's pretty much the gist of it, yeah.
Okay. The Rambling Bard would like to know, Nate, do you think an all Bard party would make for a fun game?
There's actually a couple of those from what I've seen. Sirens of the Realms is a band. That's always the thing, is it's a band, and I think that's so cool because bards, like you said, they can do anything. So having an all bard party is just like, you can still have a really diverse party with their skill sets, and they're just kind of technically the same class. Yeah, totally.
So this is a longer question from Who and What Am I? Do you think you've had enough experience playing to have a favorite setting? Like, for example, a low magic versus high magic, human-focused realism in terms of everything, or more fantastical? Like, do you have a preference?
I think I get the gist of the question, and I think everything I do attributes back to Curse of Strahd, because I think it's just so interesting. But what I like about Curse of Strahd specifically is it's less about like big, like, you know, big hulking dragons and scary monsters and these like crazy giant things. It's just like, all right, here's this beast that we have to slay, and more of just like everyone is just insane. And I think that's really real and a lot more relatable, because it's like, that is, to me, much more terrifying. Just that a person with power who is like out of their mind is a much like scarier thing than just like, oh, here's this thing that just wants to eat you. So
Okay.
so I'd say like a lot more like individual focused, rather than, you know, this scary setting, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And it's, you know, I think in a lot of ways it comes down to your like gameplay relationship with the DM, whether, no matter which side of it you're on, and like trying to make sure that you guys are, you know, telling the same story, and that it's something that both parties enjoy. Sir Monstein would like to know if there are any other stream-based Dungeons and Dragons groups that you would love to play or guest on.
Ooh, let's see. Playing the few I've done are a lot of fun. Were a lot of fun. Sirens was a blast. Trapped in the Birdcage was a lot of fun to play on. I haven't had a lot of time to really catch up on a lot of shows, but honestly, whichever ones I could do, just because like it's such a cool like tight knit community, and like all these shows to one extent or another like all kind of know each other. So really, just being able to play D&D with all these different people, anyone who would want to, I think would be a blast.
Cool. We're getting pretty close to the end here, so I'll have to take like maybe one or two more. Let's see. Destuna, how would you or Paultin feel? How did you or Paultin feel when Xanathar started singing your song and broke the fourth wall?
That it's so funny, because every time Chris mentions anything about like my personal project, because like he knows us, and I'm always just kind of like, he's this incredible DM, and I'm just honored to like play under him because he's such a fantastic storyteller. So when it goes that far as to like he's talking about like my personal project, I almost don't know what to do. I'm like kind of speechless, because I'm just like, Chris liked something I did. That's awesome. So I was kind of dumbfounded in the moment.
And then I guess this will probably be the last one. Are you considering bringing back the rival voice in Paultin's head?
I think the thing I've kind of attributed that to is, and it's something I definitely need to probably play with more, but for a while, the rival voice was basically chat. So anytime there's a situation where chat really, really wants Paultin to do something that he doesn't actually want to do or doesn't feel right to do, like that's the voice he hears in his head to be like, do this, and he's just like, no, I won't. And then everyone's like, who are you talking to? It's like, nobody, it's fine. So I think that's just something that is there. I think that was, and this happens a lot with characters. You make them and you have traits, and those traits are just something to start off with. Sometimes some traits just completely go away just because that's not how the character played out. But that's something I could mess around with. So
okay. Well, I know you have to go, so thank you so much for chipping out a slice of your time for today to join us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm sure we will cross paths again at another PAX or some other event, or maybe
definitely.
D&D will do something cool like build another Waterdeep set to hang out in, because that was awesome.
Yes, please.
But yeah, do you have anything you want to plug, shout out, etc.?
Just everyone tune into Dice Camera Action on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, and catch up on the Waffle Crew antics.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Nate. Have an awesome day and weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, cheers.
Bye-bye.
Huge thanks to Nate for having time to join us. I know there was a couple questions we didn't get to, but he's got somewhere else to be, so I just wanted to make sure we wrapped it up as quickly as possible for him, for his convenience. If anybody does look up Nate's IMDb or look up his professional website, he does a lot of stuff. He's voicing shows. He's touring in bands and recording music and doing covers of music or new music for shows. He's on Dice Camera Action. He kind of lives up to the bard jack of all trades thing in that he does everything. So he's busy. Guy's busy. So welcome everybody. I can slow this down a little bit because I was in a bit of a rush there and I felt a bit rushed. We have a lot of cool things going on right now in game, not the least of which is Grand Revel 2, the latest event in which you can unlock Paultin Seppa, who is pretty fantastic and really brings the whole room / band together. This shuffling is me getting ready. So we have another giveaway that we're doing. Another Gleam contest because cool, awesome people that we work with in the Dungeons and Dragons community that we meet at cons and events that we get to spend time with. Sometimes they send us cool stuff. And one of those cool people's name is Jean Paul. He's with Gale Force 9, and he gave us these. So this is a Collector's Series Force Grey. Set of minis, so it's all the Force Grey Lost City of Omu characters. Jamila, Calliope, Archon, Tyrell, and Hitch. Brushes, and then Nozer's Marvelous Pigments Adventure Paint Set. Our latest Gleam is for these 3. So if you would like to enter that contest and possibly win this set that can basically everything you need to paint the Force Grey team, we will have a link for you to follow and ways that are very social in which to sign up and possibly earn yourself extra chances. This is really cool. These ones, I'm not going to open this one for you. We have opened one of them, but I'm going to leave these ones sealed for whomever wins them. They come in, those plastic sheets. You got to cut them out, glue and assemble your characters, prime them, paint them, etc. And everything you need to do it is right there. We are also doing a pair of giveaways, but not quite so many through chat, in which we give out batches of gold supply chests to winners. But I will leave it to Erica and Clive to manage when that happens in chat. We're trying to do fewer chat-based giveaways, Moobot giveaways, because it destroys the chat and I can't read anything that anybody's writing, and I want to be able to keep up on questions and answer things and so on. So just stay tuned to the chat, and when the codename _entertainment account says something on Twitch, or when I believe it's the Idle Champions account on Mixer says something using the we have a hype bot in that. Cool. That is how you can participate in the raffles. So yes, Lauren, the raffle train is too long. It is. We like being able to. Every once in a while, I'm reading a question or something, and then just like boom, 100 entries, 200 entries go up, and I don't get to go through it. So. Yeah, we have a few questions here that have been saved up that I can answer that don't always all require Nate's input. So I can go through those in a second. There's a couple other things I wanted to go over. Let's see. We have the Collector's Force Grey giveaway. I don't see these on the Gale Force 9 website anymore, so I think there's a chance that this was a limited thing. Is that how the Collector's Series works? In which case, that's extra cool for whomever. But yeah, very, very cool. 6 figures. What else we got? So we've been expanding a little bit upon our Q1 roadmap with each week's community Q&As on the subreddit. I'm just going to load that up. Ignore the sound of my typing. Now it should be mouse clicks. Sweet. Right. Silesa's Guide to Paultin and Garwar's Guide to Grand Revel are both pinned to the top, so I gotta find the last event. Community Q&A, where are you? Oh my god, are we? Oh no, we're still on page 1 at least. Okay, so we have a few things that are the main things that we're working on right now, and it's just stuff that we're targeting for release, in addition to the regular content schedule that we have for Idle Champions. So, Grand Revel is obviously live now. Our next event, I believe, is Fleet's Wake, which will be coming in 3 or 4 weeks. Our next content update, we shouldn't have any update next week unless it's something to fix bugs or other issues. But the next campaign update is, I think, for Dragon Heist. But the major updates that we're working on behind the scenes that we're targeting Q1 for, a core champion balance update. And this is kind of an expansive pass across the base 12 champions that come with the game. So the very first time you boot it up, before you've unlocked Hitch or done anything else, it's you have Brunner, Battlehammer in slot 1, Celeste, Nayeli, Jarlaxle, Calliope, Ashara, Minsk, Makos, Tyrell, Jamila, and Archon. Did I miss one? I might have. So we're looking at those 12 with this update. A few of them we are targeting for larger updates. Just straight to straight up reworks. Jarlaxle is one of them. The game has changed. Jarlaxle is not as viable as we would like him to be, and he's a super badass pirate slash raider slash the secret lord of Luskan slash antagonist in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist book with a really badass set of items and abilities, and so we want to make sure that we represent that better. At the same time, Delana, not a lot of players have been using Delana once they've unlocked Hitch or anybody else in that slot. And we want to do her some more justice. She's a powerful wild mage. So yeah, we're gonna do a rework of her as well. And there may be other reworks in the core 12 where we haven't totally settled on exactly what's going to happen with all the 12 champions, but pretty overwhelmingly Tyrell's in a pretty good spot, Celeste is in a good spot, Nayeli's in a good spot, so there may be minor tweaks for them, but yeah, we're definitely we have plans for that, and we're hoping to have that ready for the end of quarter 1, but it could be pushed because it's pretty expansive. We have some pretty. We are targeting March, give or take, for some quality of life improvements as well. But I'm not going to go into that right now because I don't have a firm list of them, and I don't want to. There's always the chance that some things will make it and others won't, and other things will come up, etc. And so when we have a more concrete idea of what that list of fixes is going to look like, I am keen to start talking about it. But yes, we're not pushing these off until the summer or the end of the year. Like we're working on them right now. What else? I don't want to talk about upcoming champions right now because everybody should be focused on the bard who goes hard on Paultin right now, at least until the event wraps up. So we'll start teasing future champions in a couple weeks. Although we've dropped hints at a few of them already, so there's a very good chance that you'll be able to guess who some of them are in the short term. What else? Let's see. We're going to be at a few events this year. We are planned to be attending PAX East next as the next event where we have like a booth presence for Idle Champions. I believe we will be with the Toonhound Studios Table Titans booth once again. That'll be in Boston, end of March. Although Eric and Clive, you may be able to cross paths with them at GDC if you attend. Eric's pretty good at having stacks of codes in his pocket, so you might be able to get something cool that way. And yeah, I am going to go into these questions that I didn't answer before because we had a list. Let's see. Jawzy GG, will Jarlaxle get reworked now that Paultin and Stokey are always better? Yes. Jarlaxle is getting a rework. We want him to be awesome the way that he is in novels and in the Waterdeep Dragon Heist TRPG book. So he's gonna get some changes. Nocturne 614. For the few of us that have everything, every bit of content done, can we get something else to do? So I'm assuming that you're also referring to having completed all the new variants in Grand Rebel 2 and have unlocked Paultin and geared him up. We're always working on endgame stuff, and we have some plans for more endgamey stuff that it's just too early to share. We don't ideally like to share much information about updates until they're much closer. So yeah, we are going to start talking about more of what we're adding to Idle Champions Endgame further down the road. Colette, now that we have the full Waffle crew, how long will it be until we get the Awful crew? That's a fair question. Let's see. I mean, aren't all the members of the Awful crew are dead, right? I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. I don't know how likely it is, but it's a possibility. Let's see. Mindless Systems. Question, Dylan. As a new DM, how would you go about making a Oath of the Silver Dragon for my Curse of Strahd campaign? So I'm assuming that you're trying to come up with a specific new type of subclass for your paladin. I would do a paint job change to one of the. This is a quick and dirty, short, easy answer. Basically create a functionally identical but more or less aesthetically changed version of another oath that you feel really identifies well with it. Oath of the Ancients comes to mind, and just silver dragonify everything and just coordinate with your DM about it, or I guess as a new DM, so you're doing it. Yeah, if you're uncomfortable creating a subclass or developing it further yourself, which is totally fair, create a functionally identical one, which is to say that everything it does is the same as another subclass, but the theme, imagery, and everything else has been changed. And then, I'd collaborate with the player who wants to do it. And if it's you, I mean, if you're the DM, really, you can just do what you want anyways. But it's like changing the paint job, basically. Action Muffin. No familiars. What is this? There are familiars. Not that anybody can see them. I'll have to pull them up on the game here. But all the champions in the formation have familiars on them right now, leveling them up. And I did that so that I could spend more time paying attention to Nate and less time playing the game. Strix has Stinky, Evelyn has Juniper, and all the other ones are pretty random. That's where the familiars are. I suppose I could put Iris and, let's see. Iris and the Mimic attacking. Because why not? That's what they do, right? Let's see, what's next? Consulting Polymath. The layout of his game looks different than mine. Is there a difference between platforms, or do I need to update or something? So if you play the Steam version of Idle Champions, this is the gamepad UI. So it's the interface that we developed for gamepads through Steam and for Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So you can just go into your settings menu. I'll have to tab back into that window. Go into your settings menu and toggle display in gamepad UI mode on or off. And you do need a gamepad plugged into your system in order to toggle it on. Otherwise, and what it'll do is it'll close the game when you toggle it on, and it'll reload the game next time with the new interface. So, yeah. Otherwise, I mean, if you're playing on PlayStation 4 or Xbox, that's just how it looks all the time. Cobra King of Art. Question: have you ever considered adding large champions that would take up more than one slot, likely 3 in a triangle? That is a fantastic idea, and we've discussed stuff related to the idea of champions taking up more than one slot. Maybe a huge one takes up 4. It's something that we might be able to explore further. A concern right away is that the number of formations that you wouldn't be able to use certain champions in, but maybe that's a good thing. F5 Gold NA Party. When will Vox Machina or Mighty 9 be considered? There isn't a lot I can go into with the topic of Critical Role related characters, except to say that, given the opportunity to do so, we would love to be able to include members of Vox Machina or the Mighty Nine in the game. Connor, a bunch of numbers. Are any of the bee stingers other than Strix in the game? Not yet. OG17. Should we expect new blessings before the new campaign characters? How should I answer that question? What's the best way to answer a blessings related question? Let's just say that whereas not that long ago, new campaign blessings were something that we weren't even thinking about. Now they are being designed, and just leave it at that. Miko, Karina, Awful Crew could be Waffle Crew skins. You are correct. That is a potential option. You could have each of the 4 members of the Waffle Crew currently in the game have a skin version that turns them into Nuatlip, Evil Diath, Evil Feral Strix, and Evelyn of Shar. That'd be a good idea. Lisa, is the party DPS fluctuation going to be addressed? I can see swings of E8 in my game with using ultimates, and it's just frustrating, especially towards the end of runs. I mean, it's something that Justin mentioned on stream a couple weeks ago now, that the number is a little bit more erratic than we would like, and that's a quality of life fix we would like to address, but I don't have an ETA on it. Timadar, shouldn't Boss and Rage activate Archaon's Rage of the Dragonborn and Rising Anger, regardless of him being front row or not? That's a good question. As I understand it, he does need to be in front for that, but perhaps it's an issue in the wording, because, yeah. I'm just going to bring that up with Justin and Chris after and see if that's something that needs to be looked at in a different way. Bart Carroll, you cast Otto's Irresistible Dance on your target. What dance do you choose for them to perform? Oh, God. Probably one of the more intricate bits of choreography that Michael Jackson did for one of his videos in the 80s, like the ones where he leans so far forward that any normal human would fall over, but he somehow does it. Just something like that is just totally ridiculous. Add some moonwalking in. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for me. Evilmond, will we ever see legends like Elminster? Well, you already have, but I'm going to assume that you're referring to the idea of having a playable champion like Elminster. There are quite a few characters that exist in the Forgotten Realms who are so profoundly powerful as to make putting them into the formation as a champion with the way that we have things set up right now kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to us. Elminster being a very good example. I mean, we could probably remove the 10 characters on screen right now and have Elminster and still progress, an infinite number of areas further because it's Elminster. So the question for us with characters like Elminster is, how can we bring them into our game and have it make sense and have it be a worthwhile addition to the game and be something that's fun for players? And we have some ideas that we think are really cool for how we are going to do that, but it's too early to share any of that information. So yes, you will see them, more of them, in a way that impacts your gameplay, but I can't share anything further than that right now. Let's see. Pinky the Powerful. Are there any plans to incorporate a Waffle Crew adventure? Since we have the whole crew, an adventure that features them more prominently would really be fun. I can't speak for what Chris is planning, but let's just say that we have some pretty cool teams in the game and coming to the game, and more members of some teams coming to the game. And yeah, we absolutely want to have some adventure content based around those groups. So tentative yes, probably the best answer I can give you. Let's see. Aludra. As a new player to the game, getting started can be overwhelming. Any advice? Yes. Okay, so as somebody who I've completed all of the content in the game, but am not anywhere near as well versed or hardcore as some of the other players, even in chat. Quite a few people know a lot more about this game than I do. It's a lot to take in, and we totally acknowledge that. Some of that are things that we could address a little bit better in terms of how we do tutorials and stuff. And that's there's just a lot of features at this point, and some things are a little bit less intuitive than others. The best thing to do is join either our Discord or our subreddit communities, possibly both, because content gets kind of cross-posted, but some stuff exists only on one platform or the other. So the Discord address is discord.gg/idlechampions. There tend to be developers in that chat, but there are community leaders in that chat, and there are tons of people that are really helpful, as well as a lot of player resources that can help you find information and things like FAQs. The subreddit, it tends to have guides for the most recent adventures or events, characters, more detailed explanations of how a lot of the things work. In terms of learning how to play an idle game, and in a game where you reset your progress regularly, but your improvements run to run are either equipment or smaller and smaller favor increases. I personally, as somebody who was new to idle games last year, 2 years ago now, found it counterintuitive as a gamer in some ways to have a game where you complete it and start over so frequently. And it's just kind of wrapping your head around how best to make those incremental increases in power. So just getting into the hang of repeating runs and how frequently you have to check and set things up. And then, just kind of gradually spending some of your favor each time on blessings to make your characters more powerful, grinding out loot, and it's just I will fully concede that it can be a little bit overwhelming because there's so much. There's quite a bit of depth to the gameplay that may not be apparent immediately, but the resources that players have put together are pretty fantastic. So definitely start with the subreddit and the Discord. I just need a drink while I look at the next question. Let's see. Manstick 1986. Manstick. I saw that Paultin's Stronger Together works for himself as well, or is it just for the other three members? I'm not the best at math, but the numbers looked off to me. Let's have a look. Excuse me. Because as I understand it, everything is currently working as intended with Paultin, but I haven't read the writing in game. Let's see. Stronger Together increases the damage of Paultin by 100% for every Waffle Crew champion in the formation, multiplicative. Total increased by 2,703%. Current bonus 1.89E4%. So what is that? 18,900 something. So that's incoming, and then outgoing increases the damage of Waffle Crew members in the formation by 100% for each member of the Waffle Crew in the formation. Multiplicative, then buffed by 2,703%. So yes, it does affect Paultin, and is intended to. So if you have Paultin, Evelyn, Diath, and Strix in the formation, then you're maxing out your buff. I am not currently maxing out my buff because I don't have Diath in this formation, because I haven't played around with this formation enough yet to figure out how to optimally put them in. I assume I would have to shuffle Paultin closer to the front and Strix closer to the back in order to make it work. But yeah. So yes, it does affect him. Audio Crasix. Could you address memory usage? It uses a lot of memory. We sure do. So working on ways to lower our memory footprint is something that we do on a regular basis. If you're an iPad player, you've probably noticed that since you updated to OS 12, I think it is, or one of the more recent operating system updates, that the game has struggled a lot more because of some changes in the relationship between our game and the interface. Like we didn't. I'm probably butchering the dev description of it, but basically, we use a lot of memory. We know we use a lot of memory. Part of that is because we use Unity in a way other than how it was designed, as Justin described it. So um, that's part of it. And others, like, yeah, we can work on more optimizations. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add except to acknowledge that yes, we use more memory than we would like, and bringing that down is something that we're always working on. Zeropti. Will there be a chance of seeing a lovable, green-haired dwarven druid? Well, there's always a chance. What I can say is that in terms of the characters coming over the next 6 months or so, there are no lovable, green-haired dwarven druids among them. There are, let's see, some elves. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it. I will wait. Could you possibly do a challenge mode where you play as the epic character solo? I mean a character named Solo, or do you mean like you have an epic version of the character and that's the only character you use? We do that. We do think of variants every once in a while. That I mean, are you referring to like the Caddy Alone adventure where the entire adventure you're using just one champion and you're actually kind of actively playing them all the way through? Or I want to make sure that I'm answering your question properly, idbuddy. So if you could elaborate on that a little further, I will be able to answer it better. Garwar, the Boulder Shoulder Brothers would be fabulous. Haven't heard anything about the Claire Quintet crew in a while though regarding this game. Yeah, I just want to do nothing but spoil which characters are being developed, but I don't want to rob Chris of the chance to spoil them all the next time I'm sick and he gets to do the stream. So I'm just gonna leave that for now. Oh, okay. So you want going back to idbuddy? Could you possibly do a challenge mode where you play as the epic character solo, like Elminster, or limited resources? We could. What I can say right now is that the idea of having more challenging ways to play the game is something very much at the forefront of some future design work that we have, some things that we want to put into the game, as well as characters like Elminster. We have ways that we want to implement them, but they're too far out to talk about at all because they're so in development that everything about them could change between now and whenever they hit the game. So best not to dive into those subjects yet. Keogan. There are a number of plateaus in the game, the most prominent starting at about E22 gold that makes progress very slow. Is there any intention to take a look at this and maybe make improvements a little more satisfying? So when you say plateaus, Keogan, like, what do you mean by plateauing? Like where you don't feel like you're making progress anymore? Where you feel like you hit a roadblock and it's like it's very hard to get past it before you can start making meaningful progress again? Because a lot of the progress in this game is going to be incremental at best, like just the way that all the information in the game, all the levels, all the enemy power, etc., everything kind of scales up indefinitely. There's kind of a almost hard limit to how far you can progress right now with maxed out level capped champions and epic gear on all of them, and all the blessings purchased across all 3 campaigns. Like there's kind of like you make it to like the 350 to 450 range for most players, like somewhere in there. We will be releasing more blessings. It's too early to talk about what kind of things they're going to do, but I can say that they're being worked on. But yeah, so is that what you're referring to? Are you referring to like which part of the incremental progress are you wanting us to look at? Because I mean, you can kind of steadily always make progress, especially if you are playing events and time gates and using those to amplify how much favor you have, etc. Mops ENTMT. Is there any chance that we will see more Eberron themed characters? It was so much fun to do Warden. So everything that we put into this game, it goes through an approval process at Dungeons and Dragons, like Wizards of the Coast, in order to be added. And when it comes to something like Eberron themes, there are different ways to justify characters existing there, and like maybe we could make a good argument for one to exist, and Warden was okayed, but that doesn't mean that future ones necessarily will be. There's a chance. It's not something that we're planning so much at the moment in terms of like we're not aiming to add more Eberron themed characters or more create more characters using Eberron's races, but I mean it could happen. Right now our focus is mainly on filling out the rosters of some of the teams that we have in the game that we haven't finished yet, and you know we're also there are quite a few people that we've done cool work with that we want to make sure that characters from those settings or some of those shows make their way into the game. So that keeps us pretty busy. We announced at the end of last year that the High Rollers Eros characters from the High Rollers Dragon Heist campaign that they just did towards the end of last year, those characters will be joining the game at some point. We will be finishing the rest of the Acquisitions Incorporated C-Team champions, so Rosie and Walnut will be joining the game at some point. At which point, by the time that happens, the entire roster of Waffles Incorporated will be playable in the same formation. But, with our development timelines the way they are and the things that we're doing, it takes time for all of them to get in. And, yeah, there lots of stuff coming. Elarasa, in the event, do you get the boost from the other tokens you got than normal blessings? Sorry, Elarasa, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Are you asking if the blessing that gives you starting tokens works in all events? Because it does. Or are you referring to the when you complete an event, you can get a bonus favor conversion to some campaigns, which you can. Torm's favorability, you can add 50% more damage on the champions. Does that also work in the event or only in the Torm's Adventure Quest? Okay, so I'll just go into the blessings menu to talk about this more. So we have different types of blessings in the campaigns. I'm less familiar with the gamepad UI and how to navigate through it though, because I'm so used to the other one. But basically, if you're using the mouse and keyboard UI, the blessings in the left column are all ones that are campaign specific for whichever one it is. So if it's Helms or Torms. And then in the other ones, you have blessings that are global in the right column. I'm just looking, how do we have it listed here? Like, where do we show the global blessings? Oh, here it is. It's at the bottom of these. And so it's not separated in the same way. So that might be a little bit. So this one increases Torm's favor earned Torm, but double damage, all champion damage over all campaigns. So that refers to all three of the playable campaigns and every event. Yeah, we differentiated this a bit differently in the other interface. So maybe I'll make a note here to make that a little bit more obvious, Alessa, just so that it stands out in a different way, especially since the way that we use these icons. Maybe they'll have a different border or something. I don't know. But right now it looks like it's the way that it's set up is the last blessing in each of these is one that affects all campaigns. Yeah. So apologies if that's been a little bit confusing, because I was confused there for a moment. Question. A variant that adds more monsters to the pool, like bees in the buzzing variant, counts these baddies for both slay 25 monsters and slay 25 satyrs. Are bees being satyrs working as intended? No. No, they're not supposed to be satyrs. So that's a bug. I'll make a note that for Justin, and he can delegate that to the dev team. Who and what am I? When you're playing D&D adventuring companies, scouring the insert game world, dealing with problems in a more efficient manner than those undermanned 2 to 8 people parties, yay or nay? I'm not sure I understand the question, who or what am I? Maybe I'm just having an afternoon brain fart because I'm having my lunch after the stream, but it's like low blood sugar and my brain's not working as well, but I'm not sure I understand the question at all. Am I just dense right now, or is it just kind of a strangely phrased question? I'm going to move on to the next one while I think about that one. Crab Kolash. I joined late, but I think in a weekly Q&A you hinted at something to do with your idle champions when not running free plays or variants. Any word on that? No word to share yet. That's the kind of thing that we're going to save for... Long story short, when we have major updates or features, like, we like to hold those cards as close to our chest as possible for a long time, because so many things can change, and we don't want to promise a feature or imply there's a feature or show a feature in development that ends up changing radically or not making it to the game or whatever. So, you know, we don't want to set any incorrect expectations or what have you. So, are we planning to do things with champions that are not currently in your formation? Yes. Do I have any word on it that I can share? No. Not yet. Hellestream. So you can't really use Ravnica as a setting, but could you grab a character race from there, like a Minotaur, because Minotaur needs an iconic champion? Well, luckily in the example that you gave there, Hellestream, Minotaurs exist all over the D&D multiverse, not just Ravnica. But like a Ravnica race, like a Loxodon or a Vidalcan, I believe we could potentially use... the race, assuming Wizards okays it for whatever we're doing. However, characters from Ravnica, from that setting, whether it's Obsidat or Teysa Karlov or Lavinia or, God forbid, Jace Beleren or Vraska, none of those characters are likely to ever show up anywhere near our game. The Magic the Gathering universe and the Dungeons and Dragons, I guess they're like two separate multiverses. They have some overlap with Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, but this is a Forgotten Realms based game. It's highly unlikely that we'll ever have any of those characters. But the races, it's possible. I mean, we have GIF, we have, there's so many races that pop up just in Waterdeep, never mind the rest of the D&D multiverse, so there's always a chance that Loxodon made it through, or a Simic hybrid, or what have you. Consulting Polymath, Paultin keeps freezing up for me and he doesn't unfreeze till I swap mode or switch spaces. Any idea why? I mean, not off the top of my head. My questions to you, Consulting Polymath, would be, one, have you opened an in-game support ticket? And two, is the Paultin character still functioning and just not visually moving, or are they completely frozen altogether? Because it seems to me that what's most likely happening might be just a display glitch and everything is behaving as normal, but Paultin is stuck in the formation. I can't diagnose anything further without more information, but... You're much better off opening an in-game support ticket and describing the issue in its entirety, so that Dave or Peter or whomever ends up checking it can work on it and take a look. Let's see. Slightly question. Is Codename Entertainment concerned about too many debuffs displaying on enemies or allies in terms of clutter? I can stack quite a few of them these days. Clutter on our UI is something that's on our minds, especially with the mouse and keyboard interface, where all the buffs are part of the circular graphic below the champion. It's something that we don't have a perfect idea of how we would want to look at that kind of thing, but it's something that we keep in mind. One of the reasons that Cthulhu doesn't have a graphical element showing how many coins he's collected and how close the next demon is because we wanted to clutter the interface less. So, yeah. Anathal Belazar, what about Tangarth? The new question. The new question. The new question. How come the Acquisitions Incorporated C team is almost all in, but the A team has nobody in except maybe Binwin? I don't have an answer to that I can share at this time. Except to say that we really like working with the folks over at Penny Arcade. They're awesome. So Lisa again. Are you satisfied with Paultin's gold find at a massive base 455% as compared to others? It's early to answer that question. After we remembered to put the remainder of his champion upgrades into the game, we need to observe the Paultin in his natural environment for a bit before we decide whether or not we think he is over or underperforming. Our initial thoughts are that we like the way that he fits into the game. We like the way that he offers some potential different formations that for some players that are going to, hopefully help shake up the meta even further. And, once we do some work on Diath, we're hoping that the whole Waffle Crew becomes a popular option. But it's too early to say whether or not we're satisfied with the character because we just haven't had enough time to observe him yet. Yeah, it's one of those things because we do internal testing before everything goes out, and a lot of the time it's to test to make sure that things are working. But thousands of players playing Paultin are going to find things that we didn't find in our testing. So we just want to make sure that we get a chance to observe it a little more first. Connor 650123. Can we get more Warrington Munt in the game? Pip. That would be fun. I like Warrington Munt. Would good character. XXB Hunter Fet XX. Is there going to be more support for the phone to allow resizing of windows for better navigation and clicking? So we don't have any official support for any phone versions of Idle Champions. We've released very specifically on tablets. Now, the line between phones and tablets is somewhat murky these days. There are some extremely large phones and some extremely small tablets. And so, it's kind of like if you're using a smaller device to play the game somehow, we don't have any plans at this time to overhaul the interface for that. So you'll just have to tough it out. The game is very much intended to play on tablets. Let's see. Any update on dynamic stack counts for all stacking buffs? Even if it's in the character sheet, it's welcome. Many stacking buffs lack the actual counts. I don't have an update on it because if we had an update on it, we would have given it. But I'll just make a note for Justin because it's the kind of thing that I assume, as somebody who is not working on the quality of life updates, because that's not what I do, I assume that those are the kinds of things they're looking at, but not necessarily the things that they're doing for the next quality of life updates. Let's see, Hellish Dream. Cathris doesn't have an icon for his demon, but could you make it more visible on his cloak, such as the red stars on his robe being brightening as a visual indicator of how close the demon is? I don't know if the example you gave is something that would work because of the way that the champions are built for the game. But I can note that that's something that you'd like to see is a better indicator of that. Amp Greg, is it possible to connect my PC game to my tablet game? It is not. We don't have any cross-platform connectivity. As it turns out, Sony, Microsoft, Google, and Apple like having players on their platforms. Jazzy, could you add a way to see upgrade paths for champions in-game? For a new player, it's a lot of hit or miss when choosing upgrade paths and not knowing which champions to end up doing. Yeah, that's a common bit of feedback that we get with the interface of the mouse and keyboard UI is that you can't see all the upgrades, and like players would like to be able to see what all of the purchase upgrades are. I don't know how we intend to look at that, but I know it's something that is on our minds. Now, keep in mind with a lot of these things is we're constantly juggling bug fixes and quality of life fixes and updates we'd like to do, and how to fit it into our content pipeline, and how to do the big updates and add new features to the game. So some of this stuff, depending on how many players it affects, how many players are requesting it, and how it impacts the game, get shuffled around. And so like some of these things are things that some players would have seen as issues since the game launched, and others don't see as much of an issue, or they're just used to it. But we do notice that that's a bit of feedback that we get a lot. Last question for me: will there be support for codes on the tablet like there is for Steam? No and yes. So since we launched on tablet and on PlayStation 4 and Xbox, the license agreement for those platforms has prevented us from having a code interface for entering in codes to get free whatever. Companies don't like it when you bypass their stores. That's totally fair. It's part of the agreement to be on those platforms. So what we did was we put together a proposal for another kind of system that is being worked on, is going to happen. It won't catch players up. So if if you've been stockpiling Steam codes for 18 months, hoping that your tablet version of the game will be able to enter them all in, that's unlikely to ever happen. However, we are coming up with something to replace it, likely across all platforms, although I could be mistaken, but that's my understanding. So there will be support for a system like a code system, but it is different. I know I'm being vague, but it's when we have something more tangible to explain how it works for players, we will, but we're not ready to do that yet. But it is something that has been in progress for a long time. We submitted a proposal and waited, I think, several months in order to hear replies. I think the proposal has been approved, so we're moving forward on it. But it's still too early to really talk or show anything related to it. Let's see, Keogan. A recent change caused all current stacks to drop off a champion when they are benched. This was probably targeted toward Barrow buffs, but really makes it difficult to compare certain champions like Deacon and Vlania. Any intention to revisit this? Ultimately, benching champions to preserve buffs and then putting them back into the formation is an element of active gameplay that we didn't want to keep. So I know that having champions with stacking abilities like Deacon and Valanya can make it hard to isolate exactly which one of your formations is the best one. In that case, my recommendation to you is to do things like have a formation with just your DPS and one of them in it, and alternate them to see which one is providing better buffs. Because once you find out which ones are doing the best for your formations, you'll be fine in continuing to do so. But yeah, we don't have any intentions to revisit that right now. But I can't speak for the dev team. It might be something that we revisit somewhere down the road. Any chances of Farida's Scorching Ray standard attack looking more like the D&D visual description? We don't have any plans to change the way that the graphic looks. I mean, at the end of the day, every spell and ability, you can take the rules as written description of them for your games and be like, describe it exactly as it is described on in the spell ability, or you can change up the flavor of it based on your character's backstory, their background, what race they are, etc. Like, I mean, my Shadar-kai warlock, whose patron is the Raven Queen, everything he does is visually affected by that. So, you know, his teleports kind of go into ethereal raven feathers, which fade away into smoke kind of stuff, and like, you know, it changes the aesthetic of a lot of their abilities. What I'm saying is that the interpretation is really open. So, you know, does Farida's Scorching Ray look like beams hitting something? No, it doesn't. It functions the way that it does in the game, where she launches little bolts of fire. But we're not planning on changing that. I'm not saying we never will, but we're not planning on doing it. Garwar, will we be seeing the ability to open multiple chests at once soon? Those of us that don't use scripting of some kind are super overdoing this manually. I believe that's one of the ones we are hoping to have in our major quality of life update. That being said, because that is more than just fixing some code and also requires some interface and graphical changes, I don't know if it's going to make it into that one. But it is very much on our minds and something we're absolutely going to add to the game. Both the purchasing and opening of multiple chests at a time are things that we are looking at. Garefield, how about a number for base DPS where stacks are not included? Sorry, I got distracted by a moderation notification because I'm a mod on the D&D Twitch, so it's like, do you want to do this? Yes or no? Kind of thing. It's like, blink. Distracted me. A number for base DPS where stacks are not included. So you mean in addition to the DPS number for the party DPS in the top corner of the screen? That way? You would want sort of like a base DPS, because I get the impression from players that how players want to see that data isn't consistent across every player. You know, right now what the party DPS thing is, it's an average of your DPS over time, because like even though the party DPS says this fluctuating 2.67 E 76 right now for me. Strix hits for, you know, fluctuating damage right now. That's kind of going up and down. And, E75, like it's just kind of, her DPS very much affects that number because she does 99% of the party's DPS. But it's like, you know, it's the definitive best way to display the damage per second and the damage done by all characters and the party and everything all at once, given the number of variables that are constantly changing, it's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. So if there's a better way to do it that we can put together for one of our interface updates, we will. But like it's not an immediately obvious, easy solution that, you know, we have tons of answers ready for. Yeah. Alrighty. The who and what am I question. Let's see. Also not an idle questions and idle champions question, so feel free to ignore it. So you aren't listening, you're scratching your head after screen. In D&D, you are usually playing small parties with only a few people. You are often dealing with big problems, and these problems crop up all over the place. Logically, it would make a certain amount of sense that there'd be larger adventuring parties. Yes, so absolutely. And as when I DM, I try to have other active factions or groups going. You know, in the Office Dragon Heist campaign that I'm DMing a split party in currently, you know, one of those groups may have noticed the fact that there is another adventuring party active in Waterdeep that is doing stuff other than I believe the Rooftop Rats, I think is what they came up with as the name for their group. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I could see why a lot of people might not want to do that, because it requires like remembering things and keeping track of things, and you know, but yeah, there should be multiple groups. I mean, if there's a world-ending threat coming, why wouldn't there be all these different factions or groups or whatever trying to deal with it? So, yes, I absolutely try to include that in things that I DM, and it's a challenge to add it in a meaningful way. But yeah, absolutely. I just noticed this was episode 68. If only they had waited like one more episode to bring Nate on. Paultin could have been in episode 69. How great that would have been. Yeah, well, or if Dylan wasn't sick last week with that nasty stomach virus, I would have been in and it would have happened. Or if Chris wasn't so crazy busy, he could have taken over and it would have been 68. But alas, Paultin got to be episode 68 and not 69. But at least the episode name is The Bard Who Goes Hard. All right. Wow, it's 2:40 already. Time flies. I see that Consulting Polymath won the last draw. Congratulations. You need to get Brian W. Foster on for episode 69 now. That would be interesting. What would I talk to him about? I mean, yeah, what would I talk to Brian W. Foster about, Garwar? Just trying to make sure that there aren't any other questions I've missed. Talk to him about everything. I mean, I talked to him about which drink is his favorite one that they've come up with on Between the Sheets, I think is the name of the talk show that Critical Role has now. Yeah, host each other. Yeah, I don't think I'm as interesting as the other people that he interviews though. Like, yeah, he had Logic on there. He's talking to Matt Mercer. He's talking to other members of the Critical Role cast. I'm probably not as interesting as any of them. Has Matthew Lillard been on yet to talk about his D&D store? You're talking about Beetle and Grimm's, who are awesome, and we have we got the Ultimate Edition Waterdeep thing in the office, and it is really, really awesome. This isn't a plug for them, but like just as a player, and my boss will agree because he's way more into this even than I am. But it's really cool how they create the physical, tangible pieces of the Dragon Heist campaign. So like there is a Stone of Galore in the box. There is a Waterdeep like a City Guard crest that you could potentially wear, but in there, and it's like it's different. When you're playing a game of D&D and like you have these physical things that you can hand to somebody, like because like you feel it, right? So like what they're doing, I mean, I understand fully that the Beetle and Grimm's box sets are like they're a luxury item for people who have more to spend on their D&D, or if D&D takes up a bigger portion of their disposable / hobby income than some more casual players. But like it's really cool, and like. The CEO of our company, Eric, he takes it 10 steps further. Like he has a large format printer, so he can like carefully create documents from his campaigns in like an old English style and do the layout and design and everything, and then like large print it and like make the flyers that exist in his campaign setting. Like he made like magic wands and like all this stuff so that his players have something to hold on to, and like it just helps you immerse that much more. So like I think that's super cool. Would love to have Matthew Lillard on to talk about why Shaggy is so awesome, but also Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe someday. He strikes me as a pretty busy dude. Next question. B. Hutch. Any chance of being able to see upgrade progress as a whole for characters in the Steam UI? Like what's shown in console UI on the character sheets, or do I just not know it? No, it's not there. It's one of the things that we're looking at ways to address that kind of thing. So I'm just going to make another note for the resident UI guy about that for whenever we do get around to doing our mouse and keyboard interface update. Shadowplay. Do you consider it wise to place Volania with playing solo upgrade to be than placing it next to your DPS without it? Shadowplay, I'm not sure I understand your question. Phonics48, did Dylan already spoil the weekend buff crew? I have not yet, but you know who it is? We got to celebrate the whole Waffle crew being here. So the weekend buffs this weekend are for the members of the Waffle crew, as well as who are the Hitch and... Let me just double check quickly. This has already been spoiled in the... we have a spoilers channel on the official Discord. discord.gg/idlechampions. So there's a well of spoilers in there, and they data mined out the weekend update already, but I don't mind sharing it a bit early. Celeste, Diath, Evelyn, Hitch, and Strix get buffs this weekend. So yeah, and the golden epic equipment card is going to be for Evelyn. So yeah, that'll be our waffle crew, etc. weekend. So we're pretty excited about that. I'm just kind of looking at the chat. I feel like we're easing down a bit. What area am I on in this adventure? I've been leaving it going. Oh, only 201. Oh god, I got like 190 or 200 and something areas to go before I max out. Okay, so I'm not going to finish that on stream. So in terms of our show next week, because booking Nate as a guest, we had a slot that we'd kind of reserved either this week or next week during Grand Rebel to talk to him about Paultin and what he's working on. So since he's obviously not going to be on next week, who, chat, would you like to have on next week? There's a lot of different things we could do. We could set up an art stream and bring one of our wonderful artists on. I know Kat likes drawing on stream. We could do that. We could... Chris, you just want spoilers. Well, I'm sure he appreciates being asked for. Matt Mercer. I feel like my chances of that are slower, less likely, Justin P. Sluter, but thanks for the input. Both Justin and David have been on recently, so considering their workload, it's hard to pull them on for the next month or two. But since we have full Waffle Crew, maybe Chris Perkins. We would like to have Chris Perkins on at some point. As it turns out, his schedule is as hard to line up as Nate's is. So someday we will have Chris Perkins on here. So yeah, maybe we'll do another art stream next week. We can talk about just art in general. Patrick Rothfuss. Oh yeah, he'd be a good choice. I don't know what I would talk to him about. Viari, I guess. It's like, do you jump on chandeliers in real life? Yeah. Oh, excuse me. All right. I'm just making sure that I'm not missing anything because we're getting pretty close to wrapping it up. As much as I love talking to y'all, I do have to move on pretty soon. So if you have any other questions that I can address, and I know that I have to hold back on a lot of answers, but I hate disappointing people. So I don't want to answer something with a bit of information that's going to change. So yeah. How about Garwar or Silisa on stream? Yes, we were talking about coordinating having Garwar on here at one point, weren't we? I'll make another note here for that, because that's something that I would still like to do. So, yeah. Blue Heaven 42. Why was the game down all day? As far as we know, it hasn't been down. So if you're not able to connect, that's you, not us. So yeah. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, the Paultin's items. I'm amazed at how many people are reading and tweeting about that. Not that you shouldn't. They're cool items, but it never ceases to amaze how much people notice, I guess. Yeah. Thank you all. And actually, like just on that note, to take a moment, um, we have a really wonderful community that plays Idle Champions. You know, everybody in the Discord is really helpful. I mean, sure, every once in a while, like some heads butt. You know, maybe there's some personality clashes, but for the most part, um, everybody gets along really well. Everybody's extremely helpful. We have wonderful community leaders. Um, you know, most active lately being Mars and Garwar. Although Archimedes, when Archimedes was playing more, we have wonderful moderators in Silisa and Axis of Anarchy, who do tons of great work. And like, really, like the players are the ones that make this community so awesome. So thank you all for doing it. Uh, will we get Donar and will he be OP? Stranglethroat? No. Donar is currently in the game in slot 2. It came last year as part of, I want to say Liar's Night. Was that the name of the event? Yeah. Donar Blitzen is already in the game. Donar Blitzen was our first C team member. So hopefully you get an opportunity to unlock Donar through Timegate, Stranglethroat. Anyways, I'm going to start winding this down because we need to wrap this up. This was our show today, Thursday, February 7th, 2019. Thank you all so much for joining us, for watching, for participating in this community, making it awesome. We heart you. This show exists because of amazing people, including my co-producers, Erica and Clive, today, as well as our partners at Dungeons & Dragons, Daryl, Allison, Greg, Bart, Pelham, Satine, and of course, Obo Crazy. Huge thanks to my guest today, Nathan Sharp, for joining me, for carving out a slice of a very busy schedule in the life of a musician, voiceover artist, D&D player, jack of all trades, Bard. Welch's Game Juice, which is associated neither with Welch's nor with Juice, is coming up next with host Kate Welch. I think she's still playing Baldur's Gate. So stick around for that. And of course, at 7 o'clock p.m. tonight, we don't have Critical Role this week because they're on break, but 1 week from today, you can be excited for Critical Role. So, yeah. Thank you all so much for coming. And yeah, have a great weekend, everybody. Cheers.